Hello and welcome to the Kanawha Valley Hustlers. This is Joe Justice, and today we're doing something a little bit different. I wanted to pull aside a good friend of mine, Bob Theuring, who's a business coach in the area, and I thought what we would do is pick a topic, discuss it for about 10 minutes. So something that can help entrepreneurs in the area and that can really help you out. And Bob, hello and welcome. Tell us real quick just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a coach. I call myself a success coach. I help people in their businesses and lives to basically become the best version of themselves and what they have to offer. I do one-to-one coaching, group coaching, training, leadership development. What used to be called leadership is kind of what life coaching, business coaching is
This
today.
Isn't the topic that we're going to talk about, but that's one of the things I used to notice, like back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, companies used to kind of invest in employees and send them to leadership training and things like that. It doesn't seem to happen as much anymore, does it?
Sending them not as much, signing them up for webinars and such, I think happens a decent amount. And there's a lot of cliches and a lot of stereotypes around, life coaching and that kind of industry and such. So yeah, but obviously in what I do, I'd like that to become a bigger trend again, is getting people going to leadership trainings and such. But there's so much we can learn online. There's so much at our fingertips. So maybe that's why it doesn't happen as much. I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, I think that gets into our topic a little bit because what I wanted to talk to you about today was the whole idea. A lot of people, maybe the way to put it is they overlearn. They spend all their time learning and planning and making sure that all the dots are lined up and all the I's are crossed, right? They got to make sure everything's perfect, and then they never really get around to actually executing. You ever see people with that experience?
Sure, you're looking at one. And especially in the industry that I'm in, because professional ongoing education, that's at the core of what I do. So interestingly, a lot of that work is my work, if that makes any sense. But yeah, to your point, I mean, people are, there's plenty of analogies, but like riding a bicycle is a great example. Today, I can watch videos, unlimited amount of videos of how to ride a bike. I can research the kind of bike, what's best for me, my size, my shape. But you got to get on that bike, and that's how I learned. I don't know about you. Can you ride a bike, by the way?
I can ride a bike. Well,
how did you learn?
That's actually, so the way that I learned was my dad tried to help me, and I fought with my dad, and he just finally gave up, and I said, well, fine, I'll just do it myself. And then I fell about 24 times, and then I finally got up on there and got it going, and then went and I told you I could do it, and it was more of a matter of proving him wrong, I think.
But you went and did it. And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, you had videos accessible to you, but the reality is that's you wouldn't have thought about doing that.
No. Well, what's funny is also right along those same lines, the best example that I can think of is music, right? You want to... Everybody, you want to learn how to play guitar, then you want that afternoon you're playing like Jimi Hendrix. And that is not how it works, right? And even, I can't remember who it was. I think it was someone in the Rolling Stones says, it took me 10 years to learn how to play guitar and then 20 years to learn how to look cool doing it, or something to that effect.
Sure.
But music is one of those. That's a perfect example. You can literally spend your whole life memorizing scales and arpeggios and sheet music and learning how to read the music and all that kind of stuff. And if you never put your fingers on a string, you will never learn how to play guitar.
Yep. It's funny you mentioned the music thing. My oldest brother was a musician, or is still a musician. And Joe, when I grew up, I was kind of, I wasn't taught specifically this, but I was more or less given the, Andy, my brother's name's Andy. Andy God gave him the gift for music, which I'm not denying. I think that's true. But I saw in my brother Andy, hours and hours and hours in front of that, whatever keyboard, piano, synthesizer. No, they don't. That's a great point, especially in who we idolize, the athletes, the actors, the actresses. Nobody sees the real behind the scenes work of that. Now, I will say, like the YouTubes and such today will sometimes go behind the scenes and open up the curtain to show like your practice and such.
Yeah, but even at that, Instagram and social media in general, YouTube, all those, you gotta really be careful with those because they are presenting what they want to present. They don't want you to see them crying in the corner that day that they felt like they weren't good enough, right? They don't. That happened. but that's not going to show up on their YouTube channel, right?
No, it's definitely not. And there's an author, Cal Newport is his name. And he one of the books he writes is called Deep Work, which basically synonymous with what we're talking about here. And it talks about, that another book he writes called Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. It's one of my mantras. I tell people that all the time. It's actually a quote attributed to Steve Martin.
Okay.
But he talks about that. He says, the depth of action. I think this is what you're talking about is action here instead of study or whatever. He says the ongoing practice, the ongoing action that's what will make you so good they can't ignore you.
Well, let's break this down as we're kind of getting towards the end of this topic. Without, we could talk forever in theory. Mm-hmm. But how can you actually apply that type of doing things to business? I want to make $1 million this year. Now, I got to plan that, right? I got to get with an accountant. I got to get a business plan. So how do you turn an idea like that into action?
Well, okay. And you heard some, we talk about this, I got to hire accountant. The I got sometimes aren't I got sometimes they are. But I think it's a matter of, again, it's practice. What does a doctor call his practice?
Right,
think about that. Okay, a lot of times we don't think about that.
Attorneys call it practice. Yeah.
So to answer your question from a coaching perspective, and that's why sometimes people will hire me. Is like, Bob, I want to increase my impact, my revenue, whatever it may be. Well, we simply start putting down action steps. Okay, between now and next week when I meet with you, I'm going to, let's say you're wanting to grow the business, I'm going to call on 20 people. It's not I'm going to go read a book on how to acquire 50 new clients, which I certainly encourage that.
Right.
Okay, but it's an action steps and accountability, all these words. Don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, I think that's right. It's different for every situation, right? And then sometimes you probably have to run into this. I'm sure that there's times where it's like, well, you're not going to do that. Like, somebody says, I'm going to make $10 million next year. What do you charge an hour? $5 an hour. The math just doesn't work, right?
Sure.
That's got to happen from time to time. How do you rein in expectations and kind of let people know you want to have a positive mindset? But you don't want to be delusional either, right?
Well, it's a good point. And, a lot of people are told you can do anything. Just put your mind to it. And
not true. If you're 5'2", you're not going to be in the NBA.
No, that's exactly right. And but you don't want to put it in discouraging terms, but you have to look at things. I hate to use this word realistically, but you do. Yeah. Okay. But it turns into, again, an action plan, action steps, accountability. And, a lot of people don't have the target of what they really want. I mean, people come to me and say, I want to make $10 million. That's better than someone coming to me and saying, I'd like to make a bunch of money. So there's value. But then we come down, okay, here's $10 million. How are we going to get there? I charge X number of dollars per hour. How many hours is it going to take? The math doesn't work. We got to scale the business. We got to do whatever. But a lot of people don't want to look at that. They just want to work.
And I think, as we're wrapping up here, I think that's one of the other things that is really overlooked when people have big, unrealistic, or even maybe realistic, but big, amorphic ideas. Like they don't know exactly they kind of have a rough idea of what they want. But if you do something every single day, let's say I have a plan, I'm gonna call 100 people every single day. I'd do that for a week, and I'll probably realize real quick that's not a really realistic plan, right?
Sure.
So, as opposed to writing that down, actually doing it will also let you know where those limits are. Yeah,
and there's the, we always have the list in the morning that we do. There's also the wrap up in the evenings. Like I had 50 things on my list. I was able to do 100, or I was only able to do 5. And you talk about journaling, I've talked about that, is there needs some self-accountability and some realistic agreements with yourself. Hey, wait a minute, 100 times a day. But depends on, by the way, some people say that's nothing.
Right, exactly.
It would be insane for what I do. I think I would be hurting my practice.
Yeah.
If you're telemarketing and you're promoting a product, that's probably not enough. I mean,
right. Yep, that's exactly right.
But that's why you got to know what is the target, what's the goal, and then you got to work the math. I mean, you got to work that math. And I don't love math, but it's critical.
Do it.
So that's doing the work, Joe.
All right. I agree. I think we kind of answered some questions to kind of help you out. If you found this interesting, you can contact Bob, learn a little bit more, work with him on action steps and making plans. But yeah, at the end of the day, you have to be doing something. There has to be output, or else nothing's happening.
Yep. Doing the work will often trump the skill set. Think about that.
I think that's true.
Yep.
Thank you so much for watching and listening. This is Joe Justice of the Kanawha Valley Hustler reminding you to hustle hard, hustle smart, and hustle with a smile.